It is my pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker and moderators. First, our speaker, Mr. Charles Koch. It is no surprise. It is no surprise that one of our world's most successful business leaders has drawn such a large attendance to tonight's program. Charles Koch has transformed Koch Industries into a dynamic and diverse group of companies that employs more than 100,000 employees across the globe. In addition to his role as chairman of the board and CEO of Koch, Mr. Koch has developed a unique business philosophy, market-based management, which he has embedded into his company's corporate culture and also shared through various publications, including 2 books. His most recent, Good Profit, was released just last month and is now on the New York Times bestseller list. And I'm sure many of you have already read and reflected on the words he's added into that book. Tonight is a unique opportunity to hear more about the concepts and practice of market-based management directly from the source, Mr. Charles Koch. We're also fortunate to have members of the Koch family with us here tonight, so I'd like to take an opportunity and thank them for attending. Liz, his wife, Chase, son of Liz and Charles, Chase and his wife Annie, David, Charles's brother and a member of the Koch board, as well as his wife Julia. Please help me welcome them tonight. Our moderators for the evening are also accomplished authors and speakers as well, specifically in a daily TV show program called Morning Joe. Joe Scarborough is a former U.S. congressman from the state of Florida. He has authored 3 books about the political environment in the U.S. and is a 2-time bestseller on the New York Times list. Prior to his television career, he was a publisher and editor of the award-winning newspaper, the Florida Sun. Thank you, Joe, for joining us tonight. Mika Brzezinski is a New York City native who has authored 4 books. Her interest in empowering women to express their worth in business and in life has led to a nationwide speaking tour and events based on 2 of her most recent books, Grow Your Value and Knowing Your Value. A member of the Council of Foreign Relations, she was only 10 years old when she was first invited as a guest to the White House. Welcome, Mika. We are pleased to have you here in Wichita. I believe Joe's going to kick the activities off tonight, so please help me join our guests one more time.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
So, Joe,
Joe,
you know they're here to hear Charles.
I thought you guys came to hear me.
No, I'm sorry, I
I
forgot
had this
to tell
amazing
you.
speech.
It's good to be here.
It
We
is
love
great to be
Wichita. It's our second time here.
Second time here, but the first time with so much feedback, so it's especially special tonight. Thank you very much. It is exciting to be here, and we have just absolutely had a fantastic time coming out this time especially and talking to Charles and David and Liz and the entire
And now
group.
to all of you, and what we like to do, Joe sort of likes to start things just by blurting. I'd like to know the audience a little bit. So this is a frightening question. Are you ready? For us. Any Morning Joe? Anybody here ever seen Morning Joe? Oh, thank God. Okay, good.
Thank God.
Well, see, we had this situation in Dallas.
Thank
a
God.
crowd twice this size.
About 4 years ago.
Nobody raised their hand. So that's good. So
About
some
30
of the,
minutes in, I was like quoting Bible scripture. It was ugly.
I also would like to know how many Republicans in the room? That's a lot.
That's the most Republicans I've been around since I started working at
What am I doing here?
MSNBC. So
many-
I feel very good.
How many Democrats in the room? Come on, raise your hands.
You got some Democrats?
Hey, independents. Whoa, this is our audience. How about Republicans who voted for Obama? Don't answer. Don't answer. Do not answer that question.
You know, it's so funny, we would ask that question
Ever.
back in 2009, right after the election, and people would be like, Republicans, I did. They don't do that anymore.
It used to be cool.
They just stopped that. It used to be cool. But, you know, for those of you that watch the show, you know that this sort of variety is what we do. The idea is to try to get the conversation going and get people feeling free to speak in a combat-free zone. And that's unusual. And it starts right here. I mean, Mika...
We're very different.
We're very diverse. I mean, Mika's a liberal from the Northeast. I'm a conservative from the Deep South. Mika's dad ran U.S. foreign policy for 4 years. That's pretty big. My dad ran Little League baseball teams for 4 years.
George.
Also pretty big. Not as big, though, as what the Royals did last night.
Nice.
A banner day yesterday, Charles's birthday, and the Royals win it all. The stars align, right?
All right.
Yeah. So Mika and I have that difference also. Also, I was raised in a variety of young, as a young man, I was raised in Southern Baptist churches across the Deep South. Mika, you were actually raised in a variety of young Marxist League meeting houses in Manhattan.
We are very different.
in many ways.
And really, the variety is what makes the show and the dialogue. And one of the reasons why we're here, we always want to meet new friends and hear about new ideas and maybe even try and understand them, even if we don't agree all the time. What Joe and I found that sort of linked us, even though we didn't know each other so well when the show started, in fact, not at all, is that we discovered that our parents were just horrifically cruel people.
Mean people.
Tortured us.
Yeah, horrible family.
Horrible.
I mean, when we first started the show, it was hard to get guests. It would be like, hey, Pat Buchanan, can you stay on the phone for another 30 minutes? Yeah, Joe, I'll do it. And that was like our guests. So one day I go to Mika, I go, your dad ran foreign policy. Do you think we could get him on the show? And Mika was like, you don't want my dad? I said, no, I can handle him. She goes, no, you can't handle him. He's mean. I said, Mika, I'm a politician from the South. I can handle anybody. He's like, I feel your pain. I mean, that's what I do. So he comes on the show. For some reason, I decide I'm going to lecture Dr. Brzezinski for about 5 minutes on Middle East peace. Of course, he was an architect of the Camp David Accord, so maybe it wasn't the best thing in the world to do. And after about 5 minutes, he looked at me and he said, you are stunningly superficial.
Live television.
That was just a live television. That was a very bad start.
It was cruel, although for me I was relieved. My parents can be much more cruel. That's love, actually, my family.
That is love.
That is affection.
And then we went to Tim Russert's place back in 2007 for Christmas, and it's the first time I met her brother, the one Republican in the family.
Neocon.
He is such a... Ian Brzezinski he worked for Rumsfeld. This guy is such a neocon. Give him 3 tanks, he'll invade Canada. I mean, a dangerous guy. I go up to him and I say, your sister's great, one of the smartest people I've ever met. He said, without thinking twice, he was like, Mika had the lowest SAT score in the history of Williams College. I was like, they're all horrible
He was
people.
just sharing information. That was not even meant...
3 months later, we invite Mika's mom to the last stop of her book tour. Had a best-selling New York Times book called All Things at Once. It hit like number 3 on the charts, and it was all about her mother. It was dedicated to her mother. And so I said, well, I'm going to surprise Mika, invite her mother to have her introduce her.
No.
This was a mistake. I said, Ms. Brzezinski, come on up, tell us a little bit about your daughter, since she's dedicated this whole book to you and she's written this book for a year. Tell us something about Mika that we don't know. She's this crazy Czechoslovakian artist, and she thinks for a second, and she goes, Mika had the lowest SAT score in the history of Williams College! These are not nice people.
No. Not at all.
They're
They're
not
obsessed
nice
with it.
people. They're awful.
Charles, I was the bad one in school in my family.
Ooh.
They were not happy
Boy,
about this.
I thought you and I were kindred spirits.
I could tell today
Yes.
during our interview, we had something going.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
In fact, I think that's where we start right here with the interview, right?
Well, I don't know, because your first foray into politics ultimately gets us to why we're here today. Your parents were mean, but you made it and you took on Bill Clinton, of all people.
I will tell you, my parents were awful. I decided to run in 1994 for Congress. I was 29. I had no money, no name ID, no hope, but I wanted to go and change the world. I wanted to stop Bill Clinton in his tracks. I couldn't even stand looking at the guy on TV. He would drive me crazy. And so I ran against Earl Hutto. He's a 16-year incumbent Democrat. And I figured, since I had no money, no name ID, I needed at least my parents' support. So I went in and I told my mom and dad, Mom, Dad, I just got to make a difference. I'm going to go to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to run against Earl Hutto because I got to stop Bill Clinton from taxes and regulations and making government bigger and bigger. And I'm going to run against Earl. My dad looked at me, looked down at his shoes for about 5 minutes. And he looked up, and then he said something to me that I will remember for the rest of my life. And it means more to me now, of course, because my dad passed away a couple years ago, and I can still hear that voice in my head saying to me, "Well, that's great, Joey, but I'm voting for Earl."
That's just mean.
What an SOB. I love you, Dad. It's unbelievable. But parents can be tough sometimes, Miki. Your dad
Sometimes
can be tough.
they need
My
to
dad
be.
can be tough, but sometimes they need to be tough if they have a son as bad as Charles
We
Koch
thought
was.
we were bad.
We thought-
8 schools before he even left high school.
We thought we had problems with schooling, and then, Charles, we read your book, and we find out that you were in 8 schools before you even graduated high school.
Well, I kind of understated the case there. No, I wanted to be different.
Really? Is
And
that
I
how
damn
they
sure
call it?
was.
I don't think your parents defined it that way, did they?
No, but my father's main desire for all of us is he didn't want any of his sons to be country club bums. And I guess he thought I had the biggest chance of violating that statement. So I bore the brunt of it, and starting at age 6, he made me work in virtually all my spare times. I started out digging dandelions and baling hay, and then I graduated milking cows, shoveling out stalls, digging post holes, digging ditches, all that kind of fun stuff at 100-degree heat while my friends were all in the swimming pool laughing. And I said, why does my father hate me and their fathers love them? Well, it finally dawned on me that after 12, 13, 14 years of this, I figured out he'd got me so I didn't know how to do anything but work.
But work hard.
I mean, I didn't know what else there was. So from then on, I've worked all the time anyway, and loved it. But it wasn't just. Just an aside here. Years later, I asked him. I said, "Pop, why were you so much tougher on me than my younger brothers, who were twins, David and Bill?" And he says, "Son, you plumb wore me out." Okay, I resemble that. But he not only tried to teach us the work ethic, but also the values that he considered critical to success, and that is integrity, humility, the work ethic, treating other people with dignity and respect, and having a thirst for knowledge. Now, it took me a little while longer to catch on to that, but finally, by the time I was a junior in high school, I finally started to get on board and got that interest, but not completely. Well, I came to East High, and that wasn't a good deal that they let me do that, because I got in with the most fun-loving people, and so I'd come in and say goodnight, and then I'd sneak out and go out drinking and raising hell, and he caught on to that. So,
What David actually said, I was talking to David earlier, I said, do you have a favorite year of your life? And he said, yeah, it was the year I got to follow my brother around at East High and just pick up the scraps from him. He said,
He literally
you
said
raised hell.
oh, it's a wonder I survived that. And it's a wonder my parents survived that. And David, some of the things I talked him into doing, I'm a little ashamed of, but he lived through it, so what the hell. It made him a better man, right?
Made him a stronger man. Well, so, and then you got sent off to military school.
Yeah. Well, he tried to get me into Deerfield, where David ultimately went, and they said, yeah, they would take me, but I had to go back a year. I was that bad a student. So my father said no, so he said he needs military school. Anyway, so I went to military school, and coming back from spring break, by then my grades were pretty good, and coming back from spring break, a group of us on the train, back in those days, before probably any of you were born, we mainly took the train, and somehow we got hold of some beer. Matter of fact, we got hold of a lot of beer. And then going into Culver in Indiana, we jumped the train in South Bend and got more booze. And we could have maybe gotten away with it, but one of our mates passed out in the commandant's office. So the jig was up, so they kicked us all out. And so my father sent me down to live with my uncle in Quanah, Texas, where he grew up. And once again, it's a damn work thing. So all my spare time, I was shoveling wheat in a grain elevator. I don't know if you've ever done that, but that isn't the most fun either. And but anyway, I got back in Culver and graduated and went to MIT because I had to go there because I wasn't any good in English. And I had to go to a place where the language was math because that was the only thing I was good at. So MIT fit me perfectly because unlike Culver, where they marched everywhere and you had all these requirements and discipline every day, at MIT they didn't care what you did. You didn't have to go to class. You didn't have to do anything. All you had to do was pass your tests and do your projects. And hey, I can do that. So I was chilling out and working a little bit and partying a lot. Any of you know there are a lot of girls' schools in Boston. So that was like I died and gone to heaven. And so
the boy gets off the farm.
So I come home after my sophomore year, and I had about a B- average, and I thought, God, that's at MIT. I'm doing all right. A lot of my mates have already flunked out, so I'm doing pretty well. He looks at that, and he says, sit down, boy. He said, I don't give a damn if you dig ditches the rest of your life. He knew I'd already done a lot of that. And he said, but if you want me to pay for your education, you're going to apply yourself. Do you understand? With him, there was no question. One of his favorite sayings, being Dutch, is you can tell the Dutch, but you can't tell them much. And when he said something, that was it. So it was a hell of a coincidence, but my grade point average jumped a whole point immediately. What a coincidence.
It is amazing.
You pulled it together.
That is amazing. It sounds like a deal I made with my son after his sophomore year.
You were sounding more like a threat.
Well, actually, Charles is making both of us feel better about our children.
Well, that's my
right
whole
now.
purpose.
Thank
And
you.
so I think we need to ask you then how you got from there to being one of the most successful, influential men in the world. Was there a turning point?
Defining
where
moment?
the light switch went on?
Well, that was kind of a light switch.
Yeah.
When I was going to dig ditches or stay. Well, yeah, that light switch went on. I knew David was a very good engineer, and I wasn't that good at engineering. Although I got 3 engineering degrees, but I took mainly math and science because that's what I was good at. So I was always looking for the easy way out. And that doesn't sound like an easy way out, but it just happened to fit me. And in that, I've learned, okay, the physical world is orderly. It follows certain principles. And the way to successfully deal with it is to understand these principles. And so I became fascinated with the philosophy of science and the scientific method. And that's been a key driver of our success in Koch Industries. So we apply that everywhere. We have something called the Republic of Science, where I got from the great philosopher of science, Michael Polanyi. And that has to do with using different knowledge and applying the scientific method and challenging everything and being skeptical of everything and studying and then applying his principles on how innovation comes about. And as people who work at Koch know, that's a bear of mine that everybody needs to innovate, and not just technically, but in how we organize, how we motivate people, how we hire, how we deal with customers, how we understand them, and so on. And so that was a turning point, and then I went to work for a consulting firm in Boston. And then after I'd done that about a year, my father started calling me and saying he wanted me to come back to Wichita and go to work for him. And I'm thinking, you can tell them Dutch, but you can't tell them much. And digging more ditches, and holy mackerel, I'd just soon stay here with all the girls' schools, and I'm doing consulting for a lot of interesting companies and learning a lot. And finally he called me after I'd worked there a couple of years, and he said, son, my health is not good. This was in about, let's say 1961. And I don't have long to live, and either you come back to run the company or I'm gonna have to sell it. And he said, and we have this little company on the side called Koch Engineering, which makes process equipment. Very small company, it's break even, and it's a mess, and you can run that any way you want. The only thing is you need my permission to sell it. Hey, now we're talking, because as you might imagine, I was always kind of independent and didn't like having to report to people, like to do my own thing, and so I said, okay, and I came back. He was true to his word. Matter of fact, the night I arrived, well, the first thing he said to me is, son, I hope your first deal is a loser, otherwise you'll think you're a lot smarter than you are. And I didn't disappoint him. I got us a lot of losers. But then he said, okay, we got some fabricators in Europe for our products, and it's a mess. And so why don't you go over and straighten that out as your first part? Well, I barely knew what we made, and certainly didn't know about doing business in Europe, particularly across a whole bunch of countries. But I was too ignorant to know I couldn't do it. So I went over and did it. And that's a lot. He had so many great sayings. One of them was, don't take counsel of your fears. And I damn sure didn't do that. Actually, I never had. Liz, after we'd been married for a few years, said, you know, when I married you, I knew I'd have an interesting life, but I didn't know it'd be one of sheer terror. So, because I keep plunging into things and getting us, well, I wouldn't say in trouble, but making things interesting.
Well, you learn from failure as well as success.
Absolutely. No, I believe that success is the worst enemy of future success. is you've got to have failures. First of all, keep humility, to not take things for granted, and to not become complacent. And we see that in very successful companies. Well, this is the way we've been doing it, and this has worked. Well, the future is not going to be like the past. And this is why we stress not just continuous improvement, which we did to start, but Schumpeter's concept of creative destruction. That is, find ways to ruin our existing businesses by finding better ways to do it, better products, better way to organize, better way to motivate, better ways to create value for our customers. And the starting point of this whole philosophy is to not start a business by thinking, okay, how do I maximize profit? Now, that's good if you want to make a quick hit and get on it, but you want to be successful over a long period of time. We have found you start by, how do I create the most value for my customers and in society? How do I maximize value for them? And if you're creating superior value for them, they will pay you. They'll pay you superior amounts. They will compensate you because they want you to continue to create value for them. Now, how do you do that? Well, you start with a focus on capabilities. I've got to build superior capabilities so I can create superior value for my customers. And then I've got to find the opportunities for which my capabilities will create the most value for my customers and in society. And then you drive creative destruction, never being satisfied with your capabilities and always adding new ones and trying to leapfrog what others would do. And so when we talk about not just creating value for our customers, but finding their unmet needs. That is, needs they don't even know about. One of the examples I use in my book is IBM several decades ago did a survey of all the computer users on what computers will they use 10 or 20 years from now. And the customers, 70% of them said IBM mainframes, because 70% of them were using IBM mainframes. And the users did not know that personal computers and the internet would develop and make all that obsolete. So that's what we try to do. What is the next technology? What is the next approach? The next form of business? And we want to be there first rather than have other people drive us out of business, as happened to IBM in personal computers.
You talk about the profit not necessarily needing to be a quick hit, working for the long haul. Let's talk about the title of the book. Define, if you could, good profit.
Well, that's what I mean by good profit. That good profit is creating superior value in society by helping your customers improve their lives. And a business does that by, as I say, by creating superior value for its customers and by more efficiently using resources and driving creative destruction. And while you're doing it, do the best job of keeping people safe and protecting the environment. And if you do a superior job of all those, believe me, you will be profitable. And if you don't, you won't last. That's our philosophy.
And how do you explain what's happening with other companies in the United States today? And I guess I focus on some of the negative things that are happening. Wages are flat, and they have been for quite some time.
Well, it's even worse than that. The median income in the United States has declined by, 7-8% over the last 8 years.
Our kids, it doesn't seem, for the most part, are going to do as well as the parents.
Right. No, this is scary. In the United States, in, the last 15 years or so, has gone from one of the easiest countries to start a business to 46th in the world. This is scary. So what are the results of that? One is the income, the median income and the income of poor people has gone down rather than up, and productivity is stagnant. Wages can only rise overall as the productivity of labor rises, because what determines the income and the prosperity is not how much money you're passing out, but how efficient we are at producing more and better goods that people value. And so what I think is driving it is because of misguided policies, we're headed toward a two-tiered society. One that is killing opportunities for the disadvantaged and creating welfare for the wealthy. And that's driven by corporate welfare. And that's what we call bad profit. Well, bad profit can be like Enron, if you're cheating your customers and cooking your books, that's bad profit. But the biggest form of bad profit is corporate welfare. And what I mean by that is not just lobbying for subsidies for cash subsidies, but it's getting lobbying. And I'm not saying you take it. I mean, we play by the rules, whatever they are, but we oppose, lobby against all of this stuff. And some of you have seen us in action here in Wichita, and I'm sorry you didn't like it, but as I tell Liz, I'll try to be a better person, but not so much. But what you see is what you get. And then also these mandates, these import tariffs, other restrictions on trade, the income tax code that is riddled with corporate welfare. There are over 1.6 trillion of exemptions in the tax code, which is the government, all of this is the government picking winners and losers. And why do companies do that, lobby for that? Because that's much easier to go get the government to mandate they use your product rather than dealing with these pesky customers. They're a pain in the you-know-what. Why? Because somebody comes up with a better product and they leave you. As Sam Walton said, you got to remember the customer can fire anybody in your company from the chairman on down. And he did a great job of recognizing that because he drove continuous improvement and creative destruction. And that's what we all need to remember. And what to me is tragic is that business is committing suicide long term, and I think we see that in the politics. If for business to be allowed to exist long term, it needs to be perceived as creating value in society, as helping make people's lives better. If they see business as just cronyism and manipulating the government to get special things for that and doing a lousy job of providing goods and services for up and efficiently using resources, the public isn't going to stand for it. They're going to elect Bernie Sanders or somebody. If the government's going to be handing out favors and picking, why doesn't the government just own it? Why do we need these middlemen? And so that's
Is that can we say officially that that's your endorsement for Bernie Sanders for 2016?
You're not feeling the burn?
Because if so, we'll have a lot to talk about tomorrow morning on the show, everybody.
I don't think he feels the burn.
You don't feel the burn, do you?
No burn.
What's that?
You don't feel the burn. You're not
There's
a Bernie
a saying
Sanders guy.
when you're a Bernie Sanders
you
fan,
feel?
do
Oh,
you
I
feel
haven't
the
heard
burn?
that one.
Yeah.
The main thing I say is all the nice things he's saying about David and me every day.
Yeah.
Which thank you very much, because Bernie and Harry Reid have helped me sell a lot of books. Matter of fact.
So let's talk about your foray into politics. And obviously, you had a very successful 2014. It sort of reminds me of
What
a
does that
joke.
mean?
It sort of reminds me of a joke from A Hard Day's Night, where the Beatles went into this cabin with this old, stuffy British guy who got angry at him, and he said, "I won the war for the lot of you." And John Lennon said, I bet you're sorry you did. And talking to you today, you helped a lot of people get noticed and win in 2014. And I bet you're sorry you did. I mean, it hasn't turned out exactly the way you wanted it to turn out, has it? For your Republican Party?
No.
For my Republican Party.
I mean, just if you look at some of the things, to maintain a free society, we've got to stop this corporate welfare, and we've got to stop poisoning the well for the disadvantaged. And those two go together. Look at occupational licensing. There are hundreds of these obstacles to people who don't have anything getting a job, or even more impossible, to starting a small business. And it's driven by people in those businesses don't want anybody to just freely get in. And hundreds of these across the country, with varying by locale and by state. I mean, this is true depending on the locale. For florists, for yoga instructors, for interior decorators, for bartenders, for hair braiders, for you name it. Those aren't the only obstacles. Another one is the way the Fed operates. That we get all the money, we and the other big companies can get all the money we want for almost nothing. And because of the banking regulations, they're driving the small and community banks out of business. Thousands have gone out of business because of these regulations. And those are the ones that provided the capital for people starting up with very little, just small loans. And you can see this in that in the last several decades, the 5 biggest banks have gone from a 16% market share in deposits to over 50%. So this is another form of this cronyism that enables these big banks, and then the government's going to get their piece of that. So every time the big banks do something they don't like, they fine them for a few billion.
Well, and
so they extract their piece.
And that's what I'm asking you. I mean, my Republican Party supported the bank bailouts. Too big to fail, just got even bigger. My Republican Party, when George W. Bush became president, had a $155 billion surplus. When he left, we had a $1 trillion deficit. The national debt doubled. And I've heard you asking Republicans after 2014 not to give you anything, but just to cut this corporate welfare, and they're not doing it. So how discouraged are you at this point?
Well, I mean, just follow just a couple of specifics on that. There's something some of you may be familiar with called the Extenders Bill, and that's a racket of the government, so they don't have to include these boondoggles in future years and count it in the deficit, so they just do it every year. And it's about 55 tax breaks for favored businesses, which are subsidies. And so we wrote to, maybe one of the Koch people here know whether we wrote all Congress people or just the Republicans. We say, please vote against this. It doesn't matter if the president vetoes this or not. You have the power to stop this cancer from being renewed and renewed. There were 247 Republicans, a number of which we had supported. You know how many voted against it? 46. I'm thinking, that's a hell of a return on investment.
Yeah.
Then we say
that's
we
bad profit right there.
we got to stop the XM Bank. That's another one. All they have to do is not renew it.
Yeah.
And so they've passed that. Another is a sequester bill where, okay, we'll hold the lid on defense spending, and you hold the lid here, and then the Republicans who have the big military contracts in their district, a lot of them producing weapons that the military, or have a base that the military doesn't want, like tanks and certain airplanes and other equipment. But they want to get the votes, they want to get the money, so they've broken the sequester.
Right.
And this is more than just more defense spending. To get the Democrats to go along, they had to agree to more spending for what they wanted. So that's why we have over $100 trillion in funded and unfunded liabilities, and we're headed for a financial crisis in this country.
So I guess that leaves you with no other option but to support Donald Trump.
I'm going to vote
right?
for you.
Donald Trump, right? Bernie, Donald Trump? No?
Well, he claims to be the best cronyist of all. No, he does. He says, I bribed all these politicians. Yeah, got what I want. They damn sure did it. That's okay. That's one way to look at it. That's a little different than the way I'm looking at it, but, you know, he's running for president and I'm not.
I guess so.
And don't anybody suggest that.
Yeah.
People have said, oh, you ought to run. I said, what did I ever do to make you hate me?
So I know you're hesitant to talk about any specific candidates. We won't put you on the spot, but there's a lot going on in the Republican Party right now. Let's just say that the field is diverse and vast. And you said something so interesting during our interview today about being concerned that sometimes when the voting public is frustrated.
Right, as
When
they are
it's
now,
feels-
and so we have different people in the Republican Party leading in the polls, and we have Bernie Sanders getting a lot of attention. And this is scary when people are this frustrated with all the boondoggles, all the mismanagement by government. You'd think they'd say, gosh, maybe the government shouldn't be doing all this. Maybe we ought to let the people run their own lives, since the government proves they're not very good at it. They're running our lives for us, even though, as they say, they're a lot smarter than we are and we're too evil or stupid to run our own lives. But they tend not to do that. They tend to say, oh, we need a strong person in there. So we'll get a socialist, or we'll get a right-wing dictator. And that's what happens in so many of these countries. So we're at a scary time here on what direction this country's going. And that's why I'm so strong against this crony capitalism, this corporate welfare, and what they're doing to the disadvantaged.
Let me ask you, if it's okay, let's change subjects for a second, because Meek and I had the great opportunity to go to your boyhood home today and talk to you about some of your big influences. We've talked about your father a lot, but you had some very moving things to say about your mom when we were back in the house. Tell people here who may not have had an opportunity to know her just how special she was.
Yeah, well, I get a little emotional about this, but my mother was an extremely exceptional person. She was a great artist. She helped build the Wichita Art Association, now the Center of the Arts, that we're trying to really revitalize and take to the next level in her honor. She was an excellent artist and jewelry smith, and she was also a great athlete. She was a better shot, better fisher person than my father. They'd go fishing together, and she'd come back with 10 fish, and I'd say, "Pop, what did you catch?" He said, "I caught my ear." So, I mean, it was night and day. She was better. And then after my father died, she, with their old friend, she would still go out to the ranch. We had a pond there, muddy pond, and they'd jump in the muddy pond at night with flashlights and gig frogs. And she could gig more frogs than any of the guys. So her nickname was Mighty Mary. And that came off. I had young friends who had just gotten married, and the bride, I went into their room at her house, and she was crawling on the floor saying, "Mighty Mary, leave me be." My mother had absolutely worn her out. My mother was about 60, so. But anyway, that was great. But the problem was that she never gave. Everybody else thought she was wonderful. She was kind. Well, another thing, if she were invited to 4 parties a night, she felt a moral obligation to go to all 4. Of course, my father, like I am, I said, "Mary, just go do it all. I'll stay home and read my books." And and then if somebody asked her for something, she felt a moral obligation to help them. But she never felt adequate. So I think she killed herself just from worry and frustration that she couldn't do more for others. In my book, I have this quote I attribute to her from Adam Smith's book, The Theory of Moral Sentiments. And it goes like this, to restrain your selfishness and embrace your benevolent affections and I'll just paraphrase, is human perfection. And she came about as close as that to as anyone I've known, but she never gave herself credit. So in a sense, it was a tragedy that she didn't enjoy being such a good person. And it was sad to see, but she was great. And David's a lot more like her than is. And you look at all the things, the charities that David supports and the great things he does, the hospital and quality of life in New York.
Yeah. For people here, they may not realize that something that we had said to David earlier was about 4 or 5 years ago when the Koch brothers really burst onto the national stage, the national consciousness debates. Of course, David would give all this money to ballet companies that would allow the Nutcracker to be performed, and he would go there, and he would get booed. And he was like, that's a kind of strange way to say thank you. But Meek and I started noticing about 3 years ago that New Yorkers, liberal New Yorkers, started to feel defensive for David and Charles and all that they're not only done for New York, but also for the country. And if you live in New York City, chances are good you have a loved one who has had cancer, who has gone through that difficult journey, and it's been much easier because of the charity of the Kochs. And you can't enjoy the arts in Manhattan without feeling that. Willie Geist, who Willie's no conservative, he's certainly not a liberal either, but when people came on our show and started saying negative things about Charles and David, he just immediately rose up and said, "Hey, wait a second, this is just a one-dimensional portrait."
Well, forget Willie, Lawrence O'Donnell.
Well, Lawrence O'Donnell, a big liberal. Lawrence gets in an accident and he's being wheeled into a hospital, and he's like, he can barely see anything, and he looks up and he sees the name Coke on the hospitals they're wheeling him in. And Lawrence says, "Thank God they've brought me to the best hospital in New York."
What?
He did. He did. And I only bring that up because that graciousness came from your mother. That instinct that you have and your brother has. You've said that graciousness has come from your mother. And Liz, the grumpiness, where Charles doesn't want to go to any party at all. He just wants to stay home and read like science books. You can blame that on his dad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's close.
I want to ask, as we close, really quickly, and then I want you to ask a closing question, but my closing question is this. Why Wichita? You could have taken this world-class company anywhere in the world. You could be hanging out with David at all those cool New York City parties, and I'd give you a gun where you could shoot yourself if you had to, because I don't like them either.
I hate parties.
But you.
No, I like small parties.
But
You get
you
with some
chose Wichita.
few people and you get drunk together and yuck
Oh,
it out.
Lord, here we go. He hasn't changed.
But a big party, I mean, everybody's just talking boring stuff.
You can't hear anything. I can't hear anything. Exactly.
We hate it too. But talk about Wichita. Why is this place so special that you have stayed here and your family has stayed
it's the
here?
same, I think, the same sentiment that John Adams had in starting, creating what he hoped would be a free society here in America. And he said, this is a system that will only work for moral people. It will work for no other. And that's the way we view our philosophy. It works for moral people. That's why we hire first on values and second on talent. The worst thing for us is to have a very talented person who has bad value, because they will create more trouble than somebody who's evil and isn't that talented. And I can't think of a better place to recruit and to support people who are trying to do the right thing and are moral. So this has been the perfect place for us. And I don't think, I mean, there may be other places, but no place I know where we've been as successful as we have been in Wichita. So I thank you all for that.
Charles Koch, thank you so much. The book is Good Prophet. Thank you all very much for having us here. It's been wonderful.
Thank you all for coming.
It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Great honor.
Thanks, Anita.
Thank you.
You are so nice to come out, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great topics, interesting insights tonight. Please join me again in thanking our guests. One of the very unique aspects of this year's event is that moderators Mika and Joe will be broadcasting their daily Morning Joe show live tomorrow morning at Wichita State University just a few hours from now. If you want to set your alarms for early, you can arrive at 4:30 in the morning and join them for that event. We'd like to take a little bit of time and just thank our keynote sponsors again. So if you would please join me in thanking our major sponsors tonight. And lastly, as an added bonus, one of our own chamber members, Sarah Bagby of Watermark Books, is selling Mr. Cook's newest book in the lobby. She has signed copies in the booth in the connecting lobby. So please visit her to get your own signed copy of Good Prophet. This event would not have been possible, again, for all of the cooperation and leadership of Gary and his staff and all of the partners that we have here together. So thank you very much for coming. We are adjourned.